So let's look at some if statements in Python. If you look at if1.py, you can see that I have set a equal to 7, b equal to 9, and then I have three if statements here. And the first if statement is saying is a equal to b. And we have equals sign, which is what in Python refers to as are they equivalent, because we use the equal sign for the assignment to set variables, so we have to use equals to see if they're equivalent. The greater than and the less than sign are the same as they've always been. So if we just run this, you can see that a is less than b. If we set them equal, then sure enough, a is equal to b. If we set them different, then a is greater than b. And so that's how you would do your if statements. Each of these three if statements are executed in this environment. If we go to if2, it's doing the exact same thing, except now we're accepting input from the user. Here, let me make that a little bit bigger. So we're accepting input from the user, and we are then converting that input to integers. So again, we're only looking at integers here. So we run that, we set an integer, we'll do 5, and we'll do 7, and sure enough, a is less than b. We run it again, we can do 7 and 5, and sure enough, 7 is greater than 5. If we run it again, sure enough, 5 is equal to 5. So if we look at if3, we're doing the same thing, accepting input from the user, setting the values to integer, but now instead of doing three if statements, we do an if and an elif and an elif. And elif stands for else if, and what that means is only one of those, once one of those is true, nothing else is executed. And if it's true, the command will inside that are indented will execute. So it does exactly the same as before. So we do 5 and 5, and we got a is equal to b. The difference is this is executed, this line, this line, this line, this line, and this line, but then we're done. These 4 lines are never even executed. Where in the old one, even if we found that equal to, those other if statements were executed and evaluated to see if they were true or not. If we look at number 4, if 4, you can see that we now are doing the else command rather than the elif command, and so we're only checking if a is equal or a is greater. We're not checking if a is less than, because we're assuming that if it's not equal and it's not greater than, it has to be less than. But it executes the same way. If we do 5 and 7, you can see that the else executes. It must be greater than b. If we look at if 5, you can see this does the exact same thing. It just demonstrates that we continue on down the program with line 18. And so again, if we do equals, it then goes through, and then isn't this fun? And if we do 5 and 7, we say it must be less than b, and let's end it, and then go, isn't this fun? So as you can see, the indent is what flows with the if statements. We can do more complex if statements, and we can use ands and ors. So we accept 3 integers, we turn those 3 integers string values that are now strings, we turn them into actual integers, then we compare them here. And you can see we're back to doing 3 if statements, so all 3 will be executed, but there's an and here, which means the a and b has to be equal, and b and c have to be equal for this to execute, for this to run. So if we do this, and we do a is 5, b is 5, and c is 5, we have they're all equal, right? And if we do 7, 6, and 5, we get a is bigger than the other 2, and a is not the smallest, right? Because they're all 3 executing. So this will tell us information about it, not just one if statement and then the rest don't run. If we look at advanced if, you can see that we can start looking with lists now. And so we make a, let's make this bigger. So we make a list, and then we say ask for a name, and we store that value in checker, and then we say if checker, the value inside of checker is in names. So if it's one of the elements in names, then print it's in the list. So if we run this and we say Fred, well, if we say Fred, sure enough, Fred is in the list. If we run it and we say Bam Bam, no, Bam Bam's not in the list. Now there is a problem with this. If we run this and we say Fred with a small f, it doesn't find in the list. It does a direct comparison. It has to be an exact match for it to be listed as in the list. Now we can fix this if we look at Advanced 1, and now we are only looking at the way the input is if it's a title, which will capitalize the first letter. So now when I run this, if I type Fred in small letters, sure enough, it still finds it because it is comparing the capital one. Notice that it does not change the value. Fred is still small f, but when it compares it, it's checking the title value against the values in the list. And of course, if we want, no, I don't want to say that. If we go to the more advanced one, we can look at some other options. So we have the equals equals, we have the ands and ors, we also have not equal. We can also start making really complex if statements where we start using parentheses and doing our order of preference inside the parentheses. So it's either this true or whatever's in this parentheses true, and what's in this parentheses is the and has to be true for it all to be true. And of course, if we run it, it says they're all true. Yay, they're all true. And that's our complex if statements.